What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel, and today, guys, I want to talk to you about the Manitoba Moose. I've spent a lot of time recently talking about the Jets, trade rumors surrounding the upcoming trade deadline, acquiring defensemen, even the off-season rumors and stuff like that. We've been speculating a lot, talking about potential options, and also talking a lot about just day-to-day coverage of the Jets. But I want to talk about something that is I put on the down low a little bit because we didn't really know when the Moose were going to start playing, when the AHL was going to come back, and now that the AHL and the Moose have played 16 games so far, and they've got it underway, and the season's kind of, actually starting to really get into it now. I want to talk about the top Winnipeg Jets prospects currently playing on the Moose, and what I think, their potential to grow is, and how they've played just overall in general to start this season so far. Now, before we get into talking about each individual player, if you haven't already dropped a subscription on this channel, if you're a fan of the Winnipeg Jets, or a fan of hockey, regardless of the team you root for, this is definitely the place to be. If you would so graciously consider dropping a subscription, it would really help the channel grow. We're trying to push to that 1K mark, and I do appreciate any of the support you guys can give the channel by subscribing. Also, my Twitter link is in the description, so if you're a fan of just hockey Twitter and you're on Twitter a lot, definitely want to see my opinions and stuff, more of it, go ahead and follow my Twitter, link in the description. Now let's jump into the video, and the first prospect that I want to talk about is, without a doubt, in my opinion, the most NHL-ready guy that the Jets have in their system that could make a huge impact with the club, who recently just got called up to the taxi squad a day ago, let me add, and that is defenseman Villarreal. Now, we all know how good Villarreal is. We've seen splashes of it in his 7 games last season with the Winnipeg Jets at times, how composed, how good he's looked at rushing the puck. We also saw a good little sample size, that being small sample size, of him playing 1 game this year against the Ottawa Senators, where he was played with Josh Morrissey, in one of Josh Morrissey's best games this season, who is another player who has struggled immensely on this team this year. But nonetheless, Villarreal is a very young, composed defenseman who moves the puck extremely well, is able to jump into the rush offensively, and it's just shown how his offense really transitions well with his game while he carries the puck and rushes the tempo and the high speed that the Moose and just every NHL team plays with nowadays. In 16 games so far, Villarreal has acquired 4 goals, 6 assists for 10 points, leading the defensive core in points, and also just being the best defenseman playing on that first pairing as well. Villarreal has been a rock on the Moose, probably one of the best standout performances on the Moose to start this season, that being why he was called up to the Jets recently. I wouldn't be surprised, even though Paul Maurice hasn't played him yet, with all the Beaulieu drama and all these stupid things that I've been criticizing him about with the defensive core and lineups. I wouldn't be surprised if at this point Paul Maurice puts Villarreal in after we acquire a defenseman, most likely, with the way that Chevy was talking, to really bolster this defensive core. And why not? With a guy getting 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points in 16 games, you can't really go wrong with a young defenseman like that who's hungry and wanting to push into the lineup. So Villarreal, in my opinion, has had a fantastic start to this year's season for the AHL with the Moose, and I'm looking very forward to see what happens now that he's joined the club, if he's going to be on that taxi squad just as a guy getting experience with the team and practices and whatnot that we've seen in the past, or if he's actually going to draw into a couple games, which I'm hoping he does, because we have a lot of interesting young defensemen in Logan Stanley, Hinola, and even other guys that we're going to talk about on this list moving forward. The next the next prospect that I want to talk about in particular is the most recent draft pick, the first-round draft pick out of last year's draft, Cole Perfetti. Now, Cole Perfetti, because of the situations going on with the OHL and all that stuff there's a reason he's been allowed and granted permission to play with the Moose this year, in a year where he most likely wouldn't be playing with the Moose after being drafted, and honestly, it's very, very promising to see what he's been able to do as a very young player coming into the AHL in 16 games. So far in 16 games, 3 goals, 5 assists for 5 points, playing almost anywhere in the lineup. He's been at times where he's been on the first line centering it. There have been times where he's been on the bottom, the 4th line on the wing. He's played almost everywhere in the lineup, the power play, the second power play. He's been very, very good almost everywhere in the lineup, playing every type of role that the coaches ask him to do extremely well. And why, in my opinion, I think that is so promising and is so interesting that the Jets coaching staff of the Moose, I should say, is doing that with him, is because we all know that Cole Perfetti is a very dynamic forward. He can play the center very well, but he's also a skilled winger. So to have Cole Perfetti come in and play as a skilled winger, a skilled center, a depth winger, and a depth center in all these different roles so far in just 16 games played, and still be successful in 3 goals, 5 assists, is pretty good. So you can't really go wrong with that. He's been very, very consistent, in my opinion, when he's been able to play at times and really get into a good offensive role. And I've been very impressed with Cole Perfetti, because I didn't really think we'd be seeing much from Perfetti at all this year with any AHL experience, and I thought it would be more of something next year. I think, in my opinion, with the way that the Jets are looking with the timing of how they want to go for that push and whatnot, and depending on whether or not they sign Paul Stastny again, and there's all these questions about the top 6 going into this year's offseason. So with all that being taken into consideration, organization. I honestly thought Cole Perfetti would be a few years out of the way before he gets a consistent roster spot, but I think this is just a lot of good promising signs from him developing with the Moose like this, and it's very, very exciting to see his potential so far in 16 games. Now, the other player I want to talk about is a guy I talked about a year ago on my channel in one of the first videos that I ever made, talking about the Drew Stafford trade at the deadline when we got rid of him to Boston, and that is Declan Chisholm. Now, Declan Chisholm is, if you don't know, a very, very, very underrated Jets prospect that has been in their system for quite a while now, 21 years old, and is very, very, very skilled with moving the puck. In my opinion, Declan Chisholm has the potential to be one of the Jets' best and most dynamic offensive defensemen ever since really Toby Enstrom in his rookie years with Atlanta and coming over in the first few years with the Jets. He has so much potential to grow his offensive game, and he's been very, very promising as, again, another rookie coming in to the Moose, playing in 16 games so far, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points. Very, very promising, and just showing a lot of composure for a guy who, in my opinion, I didn't really know what to expect and when he would make the Moose, because he's been very successful in the OHL, but to bring him into the Moose, see him carry over that offense, not as much, but to the point of being consistent as a rookie in the AHL is very promising, and that is just another defenseman that the Jets have coming in the wheelhouse that just makes their core of defensive prospects so interesting. Hinola, Declan Chisholm, Dylan Sandberg, there's a ton of potential there, not even to mention Sami Niku as another young wild card who's having problems drawing into the lineup, but it still has potential. So the Jets have a lot of different types of ways that this defense could be made up coming into the next couple years. So again, just another interesting defensive prospect who I'm very eager to keep my eye on to see what happens with his growth with this organization. Now, the next player that I want to talk about is a guy who, in my opinion, has kind of been done dirty this season, and that is David Gustafsson. David Gustafsson spent a lot of time in the taxi squad, not really drawing into any games. Jansen Harkins as well, not really drawing into any games. Him and Jansen Harkins, in my opinion, were done dirty by Paul Maurice because they weren't, same with Christian Vesalin, if we're being honest, because he didn't really get any playing time, all three of those guys, and they weren't on the Moose playing, they weren't getting a lot of experience, and David Gustafsson has just recently been starting to play with the Moose, being that top-line center. In 6 games played, though, he's been phenomenal with the Moose. In 6 games played, he's averaged a point per game, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points, obviously, and it's just been a real good shutdown center down the middle of that ice. Again, really showing how, in my opinion, I think David Gustafsson can really grow into an Adam Lowry type center on that 3rd or 4th line. A really good bottom 6 prospect asset that the Jets have that are not really managing well, and in my opinion, they could really use him as a good trade piece. Even though I'm not for trading young players, David Gustafsson has just been done dirty for a couple years now by the Jets with his development, so I think he could be an interesting trade piece, especially considering he's been so hot with the Moose ever since joining them in the 6 games so far. So another interesting piece who I'm looking forward to see how his continued offensive and overall defensive game grows with the Moose this year as he continues to play, and whether or not he continues to play on that first line, because if he does, I think he could really get his value up and also draw into more games for the Jets in the future. So a lot of promise with David Gustafsson in 6 games, and a very interesting prospect that the Jets still have coming through their system. Now, the next player I want to talk about is defenseman Dylan Samberg. Now, I've talked a lot about Dylan Samberg on this channel in a lot of different videos about why I think he's been very good two-way, a guy who can come in for the Jets organization, who can really help push the play, who's physical, and just all these good positives with Dylan Samberg. And if we're being completely honest, I haven't been very impressed with Dylan Samberg's play with the Moose this year. He's drawn into every single contestant so far, 16 games played, 0 goals, 1 assist, obviously for that 1 point, and he just hasn't been a very consistent offensive threat for them, and he's been good in his two-way game defensively, but I want to see more from Dylan Samberg offensively, obviously, and I want him to see him push the tempo more. He has that kind of almost Josh Morrissey type of edge with him, and how in his rookie years and when Josh Morrissey was in the WHL, and especially when he was with Kelowna, how he could really play good, solid defense in his own zone and then really quickly jump out in the transition game, push the puck, and just be good support on the puck and jump in from the blue line with good shots, good and just whatnot. And I just expected to see more from Samberg doing that, but I haven't been very impressed with his play overall. He still has a lot of potential to grow. Obviously, coming in from college to the AHL is a big jump, and I'm just interested to see what happens with his growth and continued development playing with the Moose. I think there's a lot of potential with Samberg still, but not very good start so far in 16 games for him on the Moose, with those only being 1 point and an assist. So looking forward to see what happens with Samberg's game, but I also want to see him, be more involved offensively like I know he can be. Now, the next player I want to talk about is Christian Vesalin. Now, Christian Vesalin, like I said with David Gustafsson and Jansen Harkins, has been done very dirty in my opinion, especially Vesalin, not really drawing into a lot of games at all and being good with the Jets in the games he has played, registering an assist and a point, but then being obviously sent back to the taxi squad and not playing a lot. So it's nice to see Vesalin actually getting into some contests with the Moose, actually being able to consistently work on his game at the AHL level and play hockey in meaningful minutes, which is good. In 2 games played, Christian Vesalin has been able to acquire 1 point, so a good start for him in 2 games. He's looked very composed, looked very much like that Christian Vesalin in Liga and in the NHL as well. Hard on the puck, very good at skating. He's a lot more heads up now and can read plays a lot better than what we saw from him in the past. And I'm just looking again looking at the future with Vesalin, and I do think there is a top 6 potential for him still. It's just going to be interesting on whether or not that's with the Jets, because I just don't know if the Jets are going to use him properly, because in my opinion, again, Christian Vesalin should be on this roster. There's no excuse why our first round pick from only two or 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, isn't playing with this club. Like, I just don't get it. Like, he's not a guy that is like a defenseman that needs more time to grow. He showed a lot of promise in Liga. He comes over and he plays pretty good in the minutes he gets into with the Jets, and then he gets rewarded with, you know, an assist. He gets a good point. He plays well, and then Paul Maurice is like, nope, we're going to take you and throw you in the taxi squad. And Paul Maurice has done this a lot this year, and I've been a heavy criticism of it, is that he's talking about how he doesn't want young guys to sit in the taxi squad, yet for the entire start of the season almost, the taxi squad was full of young players not really playing at all over older guys that really, in my opinion, shouldn't have been. And I'm okay with trying to push the best Stanley Cup roster lineup forward with consistency, and if you're going to roll with Nate Thompson, you might as well keep him in at this point, but I just want to see, if you aren't going to play the young guys, don't have the young guys filling up the taxi squad spots. If you're signing older veteran presence for them to play, then you need to have... in my opinion, that's reversed. You should be signing older veteran presence to be that presence in the press box or the taxi squad in this year's case, and then have them come in for young guys when they struggle. Not have young guys come in for injury replacement and then send them to the taxi squad where they don't play. Similarly with Marco Dano and Nick Batan in the past, we've seen this a lot in the past, and I want to see more from Vesalin, and it's promising to see him with this development so far with the Moose. The last player that I want to talk about is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting prospects the Jets have, and that is goaltender Mikhail Burton. Now, in 14 games played so far for Mikhail Burton, he's posted a .288 goals against average, a .909 save percentage, with a 6 wins, 6 loss record so far. And in my opinion, those numbers don't really do him justice. He's made a lot of amazing highlight saves. He's been very, very good with a high shot attempts, and I just think he's going to be really... I think next year he's going to be the backup regardless. I think Laurent Brossoit is having a good year and a very limited amount of performances, so I think that there might be a team interested in signing him to a more increased role. So I'm interested to see what happens with Burton at the NHL level. Obviously, in my opinion, he's much better than what we saw from Eric Comrie when he was at this stage, and I'm very impressed with Mikhail Burton, to say the least, and I'm looking forward to seeing him jump up into the Jets organization soon and play at an NHL level. So again, just a very interesting prospect the Jets have, in my opinion, who has had a very good start to the season, whose numbers aren't the greatest, but nonetheless are still pretty good for a guy with a 6-6 record. So, and that basically wraps up my opinion on the best top Jets prospects that they have that have currently played the most games. Obviously, some of these guys, Vesalin and Gosselskin, are small sample sizes, but for the rest of them, the top prospects playing pretty good hockey minus Declan Sandberg. I'm interested to see how this AHL season continues to go with these players for the Moose, and it's going to be interesting to keep following these guys as the season progresses. But let me know your thoughts on these players. Let me know your thoughts if you are a Moose fan or a fan of just hockey in general and you watch the Moose every once in a while. I know it's, a pain in the ass to pay for AHL TV, but if you do that, let me know your thoughts on them in the comment section below as obviously. And if you're a fan of hockey regardless of the team you root for, definitely consider dropping a subscription, as it really does help the channel grow, as I said at the start of this video. Peace, love, and positivity as always, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you guys in the next video. Go Jets, go. Go Moose, go. It's going to be a good season. Let's see what happens.